From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, real therapists. Do you want some free advice? Visit us at podtherapy.net or tweet to us at podtherapyguys to submit your questions to the show. We're recording episode 2, which can mean only one thing. The feedback we got from episode 1 wasn't bad enough to make us stop.
Try harder if you want us to quit. Send that hate mail.
And now, broadcasting from Level 9 Studios, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy. So, President Trump over the weekend let us know via Twitter that he is a stable genius, which is
a very stable genius.
Right, which is a quality we all look for in a president.
I'd like that. Yeah.
We've never had one that had to publicly affirm it.
But I appreciate the candor. He's letting us know.
Now, very early on, when we first started recording this podcast, a long, long time ago.
In the early days of 2018, as I remember. Yeah.
We made the commitment that we were not going to become political simply because there's a lot of people already doing that that are probably doing a better job than we are. No one's going to tune into Therapy Guys to get political advice.
Feedback.
However, this one kind of started to fall into our wheelhouse a little bit.
That's right.
When it starts getting into some mental health.
Let the record show, Nick, we did not go looking for him. He came over to our side of the street and said, let's talk about my mental health. Thank you, Mr. President. We would welcome that conversation.
Yeah, so since the president has publicly opened up a discussion about his own mental health, we've been getting some tweets. We have been getting some feedback and some questions from people we know, just asking, what's your opinion on all this? Would you like to weigh in? So we decided to break our silence for a few thoughts about the situation. So here's the thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was making a mental health diagnosis. What do you feel the public needs to know about that?
I think the public probably needs to start with, it's not as easy as you guys think. I'm seeing a lot of hashtag stable genius on Twitter, and all sorts of folks have offered really, really bold clinical opinions about President Trump. So, Nick, I think we're hearing a lot of folks that are, coming out of the woodwork and saying, here's what I think he's got. Here's the language that I'm going to use. But maybe we should start with teaching the listener exactly what we have to do in order to make one of these diagnoses.
Right. And there's a lot of mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists that are public figures that have podcasts, TV shows. And for the most part, I'm not seeing a whole lot of them stepping out on the ledge to make any kind of public statement or public diagnosis, which I think says a lot.
Oh, not just that. That's the number one question I've heard. I mean, I think the two questions I've heard is, one, what do you guys think is going on? And two, why aren't you guys telling us what you think is going on? Why is Dr. Drew, Dr. Phil, why aren't any of you guys offering us a diagnosis? And you're right. There's a silence from our side of the street. And I think that's what's befuddling a lot of people. Why aren't we doing that?
For there to be a diagnosis, there has to be a thorough evaluation, which is something that needs to be done in person. This is not something that can be done just by sound bites that we see, by tweets, or by small clips on TV.
Or via press conference.
Exactly.
Or Twitter. Can't do that. We don't diagnose people at 140 characters at a time.
Right. And I think one of the big things that I wanted to kind of illustrate with this is that there's a big difference between having traits of a mental health diagnosis versus having a mental health diagnosis. Because that's something that we see a lot with self-diagnosing.
Right.
The example I always like to use when I hear people say, oh, I'm OCD. I love having a clean apartment. I'm very OCD.
I'm OCD. Why? I do my dishes.
Part of that may be just the way we speak. Right. I think for the most part, people don't actually believe that they have OCD.
Right.
But there are occasional instances in which that does happen where people will make a diagnosis. And really what they're saying is that they have some traits
symptoms
of a disorder.
Right.
But there's a lot of criteria that one has to meet to get a mental health diagnosis.
Yeah, it's a whole page of checklist items that you have to kind of do some exhaustive work in even to do that. I think that we have a phenomenon now where people go on the internet and they type in like the 3 things that they noticed they had today, and then WebMD comes back and it's like, yeah, you're definitely dying, or it's like OCD, or this is a very severe thing, or you have borderline personality disorder, and we see that all the time, and not just self-diagnosing, but diagnosing other people. There's a lot of I think effort going on where people are like, yeah, my boyfriend is schizophrenic. Like, wow. Holy cow, that's severe. Well, why did you conclude that? Well, he doesn't seem to catch my emotions.
Right. So. Or so-and-so is a sociopath.
He's a sociopath. Oh, my gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the harm in doing that?
Gosh, it's a lot of harm, guys. I mean, so I get that. I'm glad that people are fascinated with mental health, and that's part of why we get to do this podcast, is a lot of people are starting to dabble in this language and wanting to know how it works. I guess the caution I want to send to folks is like, this is a medical discipline, and if you saw a rash on your friend's arm, I don't think you'd walk up and tell them what that is. I think you'd say, I'm concerned. I think you should go get that checked out by the experts. And that's, I think, the exact right thing to do, but we got to be really careful how we speculate on this stuff, right? Because there's a lot of work that goes into diagnosis. I mean, Nick, whenever you diagnose somebody, how quick can you do that? You turn that around in about 3 minutes, you take one look at them and say, yep, you're definitely a sociopath.
No, absolutely not. Yeah,
Right.
This is something that takes some time. Right?
Yeah.
I think to kind of clarify that message, the issue that we are kind of talking about and kind of the stance that we're taking in this isn't necessarily rushing to his defense and saying, no, I don't think
No.
this. It's more of an issue of separating the discussion of capability of performing one's duties from making a mental health diagnosis.
Yes. Competence.
You can have, I think those are, competence, that is a fair
Yes.
discussion. I think that's a good discussion to
Very
have.
fair.
For me, my perspective, the concern that I have with throwing out mental health disorders is that if that's done inappropriately, it adds to the stigma
Yes.
of mental health. And I'm concerned that the individuals who do have mental health issues or mental health diagnoses are less likely to seek treatment.
That's right.
Because of the stigma that gets thrown around. That would be my biggest concern.
Absolutely.
With all this.
That's my big concern. My thing is this. I don't want to see anybody weaponize medical terminology to hurt somebody or to make somebody else appear less than. That's just not what those words are for, right? And so, like, if you're genuinely concerned, I think that you point at that rash and you say, buddy, I think you should go get that checked out. But we don't, like, call that person names, and, like, start saying, you got this rash, you must have a problem. Like, that's probably the wrong use of these words. And I think there is a huge cost. If people hear this, they're going to say, well, I didn't vote for Trump, so I'm not going to go see a therapist because people think he should see a therapist, and I'm not like him. And it's like, whoa, guys, therapists are not referees in politics. We have one job. We're helpers.
Right.
We don't vote, in the office. We're there to just find out what's going on and see if we can help you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I see a lot. A lot of questions that I get from people that I know that are not involved in therapy. And you'll see this even on Reddit threads of people who just are not comfortable seeking therapy or seeking any type of health, mental health help.
Yes.
Because of the stigma. And people will get stuck in their disorder. And, it starts to affect their lives.
Yes.
There is a solution, but to take the steps to get to that solution, they feel like they're going to be looked down upon.
So let me ask you this, Nick. So I think we're both in agreement that when we're using mental health words, when we're talking about this, and again, for the listener, the president came to our side of the street. He's the one that opened up a public dialogue about his own mental stability. Fine. So we're having that conversation. And you can hear us saying, hey, we don't like to diagnose from far away. It takes a long time for us to get to know somebody and really come to a clear conclusion. So let's all be really thoughtful about what it takes to actually arrive at conclusions. However, having said that, I think this is an important moment in history because in the last 5 to 10 years, we've all collectively as Americans realized that health is bigger than just physical health, right? Mental health matters. It's becoming part of the core of how we see healthcare. Anybody who wants to be the next president of the United States goes and gets a physical evaluation by a medical doctor of their choosing, and they release that to the public when they're ready, because the status of your blood pressure is our business if you're going to have your hand next to the nuclear trigger, right? I think it's time for us to include a mental health examination as part of that. And that's not, us weaponizing mental health. It's just part of the normal business of a medical evaluation. And if you don't like our opinion, go get a second opinion, right? And then release that to the public on your terms. We're not going to do that for you. There's actually a congressman, Representative Brendan Boyle from Pennsylvania, actually put out the Stable Genius Act, which essentially requires, it's really called that. It's called the Stable Genius Act, and it actually requires anybody who files for the office of president to get a full medical and mental health evaluation, and for that information to be released to the public. Now, I think he's trying to be pretty spiteful by calling the
act.
It's
a little passive-aggressive.
It's a little on the nose. But I actually agree with the spirit of the idea,
right.
even though I think he's kind of being a jerk in how he's doing it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, as we move forward with, seeing all of these laws being passed with mental health parity and how we are treating mental health the same as we are treating physical illness, that to me makes sense.
I think it does. And, I want to take a second, Nick, because you and I are avid podcast listeners. That's why we got into this. I want to celebrate some folks that I think handled this issue right. I'm a big fan of a show called Pod Save America with the guys Jon Favreau, John Lovett, and Tommy Vitor, and they had an awesome opportunity to really fumble this and deal with the stable genius thing by weaponizing mental illness words. They didn't do it. So I'm going to give them huge props on that. I also want to celebrate NPR Politics, which is a great show. They actually did a 10-minute treatment where they surveyed therapists and explained in clinical language why they refuse to diagnose somebody, why that is unethical to do to a public figure. And I just appreciate that they're adding to this dialogue. Anytime people are handling it right, I want to celebrate it. I want to highlight that and say, let's do more of that.
Absolutely.
So, Nick, we got our first big question today, and I want to start this one off. I'm going to read it. This question is titled, I'm worried about my boyfriend's mental state, and I'm not sure what to do. And it's submitted by username Unprepared Adult. She writes, I am currently dating my first boyfriend ever. He's 26, is genuinely one of the kindest, gentlest people I've ever met. I'm very, very happy in our relationship, and even though I'm a total perfectionist, there's pretty much nothing I would change. That being said, I'm currently worried about my boyfriend's mental state, and I'm not really sure what to do. Basically, he is very loving. He's always doing lovely things for me, and saying lovely things for me. When we met, I was not at all confident about myself or the way I looked, and he's changed that dramatically. All this might sound amazing, and truly I appreciate everything he does. But lately, I've also been worried that he does these things because he feels he has to, and he feels unworthy to be with me in some way. This is especially obvious on the rare occasions that we fight. Recently, for example, we were watching TV, and he snapped at me for chewing too loudly. I stood up in a huff and I left the room. And he followed me and started crying. Then I started crying and saying that I was upset because he had made me feel disgusting for the way I chew. It was such a silly argument. And I was more than ready to forgive and forget. But then my boyfriend started saying that he deserved to die for hurting me, and that he was a piece of expletive, and all of these other horrible things about himself. He was shaking and crying, and I had to hold him and rub his back and tell him I loved him and forgave him repeatedly before he could even begin to calm down. He kept saying how effed up he is and how he doesn't want to affect me, even though I told him that I want nothing more than to help him and that I'm completely content in our relationship. While it's obviously a good thing that my boyfriend doesn't enjoy hurting my feelings, it also scares me that he's quite so terrified of hurting me. I mean, it seems inevitable in a relationship with two imperfect people. We're going to hurt each other from time to time, and we need to be able to forgive each other and ourselves. If I had upset him in the same way, I'd feel guilty for sure, but I don't think I'd feel as if I deserved to die. My boyfriend is a wonderful, handsome, smart, kind man, and it horrifies me that he wouldn't realize that, or that he'd somehow feel inferior to me. I don't really know what to do. Does this sound like a serious problem, or am I just completely overthinking it? I've suggested to my boyfriend that he go to a doctor or a therapist, but he was adamant that he won't, and I don't want to pressure him. He's also stubborn, and I don't think it will work. Are there other ways I can support him? I don't know. I feel kind of scared, like he's giving me way more power over his mental well-being than I can handle. Ugh, please help. Jeez,
Okay.
Nick, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
So when you hear that, that's a good story. There's a lot to that. What do you take away from that?
Yeah, let's unpack this a little bit. I think to answer her first question, am I completely overthinking this, or is this a serious problem? I don't know as if it's a serious problem as much as it could develop into one. I don't think she's overthinking it. If it's something that she's concerned about, then I don't think it's possible to overthink it.
Right.
That's a legitimate concern.
Yes.
When somebody says that they feel like they deserve to die for hurting you,
Wow.
yeah, that's pretty powerful.
Right.
Automatically, my mind went to: is this attention-seeking behavior, or is he serious? Which I don't know. Obviously, I mean, if she felt compelled enough to write about this, I'm assuming that she has ruled out this as being attention-seeking
Yeah,
behavior.
she seems to take it seriously anyway.
Yes, absolutely. So what I kind of get from this is that he identifies this as being a problem, but doesn't want to really address it.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this conflict going on with him of he seems to understand that this is not right, but then when it comes to, well, getting help,
Right.
no, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that.
Well, what is your other option? Do you just hope this goes away?
Right.
I would love to talk to
Yeah.
him and kind of figure out, like, well, what do you want to do about this? Obviously, this is affecting your girlfriend,
Yes.
who obviously is very important to you.
And she seems to be thrilled about him. I mean, half
Right.
that letter was, he's awesome. I love him, but he doesn't seem to love himself.
Yeah, so to kind of answer your question, unprepared adult, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that you can support him. I think there's a lot of ways that you can help. Being supportive of him getting any kind of help, whatever it is
Yes.
that he's willing to do. If he's not willing to go into therapy, is he willing to talk to somebody? Is
Right.
there if he's part of a church, is there a pastor that he can talk
Right.
to? Or if he's part of any other kind of support system, is there anybody
Yes.
that he can turn to outside of the relationship
Yes.
to ask questions and get some good, honest feedback
Yes.
about this? To me, I'm hearing a lot of insecurity.
Yes.
I'm hearing a lot of, in a way, fear of maybe losing this relationship, and the fear of possibly being alone.
Yes.
It'd be really interesting to get some more information on his backstory as far as previous relationships.
Yes.
There's part of this that even I can kind of relate to.
Sure.
Having been in a 10-year-long relationship and having that end suddenly,
Yeah.
and it's like your entire foundation is completely crumbled.
Yes.
And the idea of being alone
Yes.
is scary.
Scary, right.
And then you start to say things like this because it's you interpret everything as being a much bigger deal than it really is.
Yes.
Right? So that would be something that would definitely need to be addressed in hopefully therapy.
Yes.
If he becomes willing to address that. So as far as support, yes. I mean, just being there, being able to talk to him. And I would really kind of ask him, if this is something that he is concerned about and he knows you're concerned about, throwing it back to him. What are you willing to do to address it?
Yes.
If you know that this is a problem, this isn't going to last forever, right? I mean, at some point, somebody's going to get frustrated.
Yes. I think that's huge. And, one of the things I heard you saying is you're telling her it's not your responsibility to solve this. Like, you're witnessing the problem, but coming to him proactively and saying, can we both agree that this is a disproportionate response to what's happening?
Absolutely.
And can I put that ball in your court, right? I listened to this podcast, and these guys said maybe you should talk to somebody in your circle, a friend, a mentor, an old coach, a pastor, a teacher, somebody, your supervisor at work. Get some outside perspective on this thing, but I'm going to ask you and challenge you to do something about it.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
So when I hear this thing, the thing that I kind of take away is I kind of go back to marriage and family therapy. So in marriage and family therapy, we talk about what's called the relationship triangle. So like 3 different things that you could be in a relationship. And usually we see that one person is one thing and one person's the other thing, and they kind of swap around. So those 3 things are the persecutor, the rescuer and the victim. So the persecutor beats the other person up verbally, kind of picks on them. The rescuer is always trying to make things better, and the victim's always, beating themselves up and kind of self-hating. In this situation, I kind of see that she goes from being the persecutor 1 second of like, hey, don't attack me. And then he flips over and becomes the victim. And he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. I'm so sorry. And now she has to switch roles. And so she switches over to the rescuer. And she's like soothing him and saying, hey, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
Right.
And then sometimes he flips over to the persecutor, right? And so what's interesting about that is if she continues to be only the rescuer and he's constantly fading back to the victim, what you said earlier is true. She's going to get exhausted. This is not a cycle that can continue in perpetuity.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. So I think Nick's advice is right on. It's time to interject a third person into this thing to sort of take a look at this wheelhouse of like this triangle relationship and get him to a place where he doesn't automatically become the victim, that he can sort of see himself doing it and think that through before he just lashes out and starts self-hating. That's unproductive and it's not going to last.
Absolutely. All right. Our next listener writes in, why am I sexually attracted to my therapist? Some background info. I am a 23-year-old female who is currently seeing a 28-year-old female therapist who is an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker. I graduated with my bachelor's of social work in May, and I plan to start my master's of social work in August to become an LCSW as well. So, to our listener, first off, right away, good call.
Oh, come on.
even Dr. Jobin will admit that is a good decision. If you're going to pick that, yes.
He's biased. Don't listen to him.
It's marketable. That's all I'm saying. All right, moving on. Back to our listener. This is part of the reason why I chose an LCSW, because I felt we would have a lot in common. I'm in therapy to take care of a lot of my baggage to prevent it from affecting future clients. Here's the tricky part. I have started to have sexual feelings towards her, and my body has physical reactions during sessions. I'm super confused about this because I've always identified as straight. In fact, I have been in a long-term relationship with my current boyfriend for 3 years. Therefore, I'm not sure if transference would even be relevant to this situation. I know that transference is a strong possibility considering I've always been straight. I find myself having these sexual fantasies and then wishing we could be friends outside of the session. She has complementary personality traits, which I find attractive, and of course we have similar political and worldviews. So that's why I think there could be some transference going on. Do you think this is something that I should bring up to her? How exactly should I word it? Would it affect the quality of our relationship or freak her out?
Great question.
Any advice would help out a lot.
That is a great question, Nick.
Yes, this is a really good question, but honestly, it's not anything we haven't heard.
Yes.
Actually, a lot more common than what people think.
Yeah, really common. And I think that's one of the reasons people are scared sometimes to go see a therapist. So, Nick, she's using a lot of industry words that come from the profession because she's studying to be a therapist, right? So one of the things she said was transference. So transference is whenever the patient starts to have feelings for the therapist that don't reflect the accuracy of the relationship.
Right. So transference, a lot of times, it's basically what we relate from usually past relationships or past experiences that get passed on to the therapist. Right. Now, this doesn't only happen in therapy. This happens in real life.
All the time.
So a coworker of mine reminds me of a cousin that that I used to associate with and hang out with and spend a lot of time with. So I start treating that person as if they are that person.
Yes.
Right?
So this happens all the time in therapy. We'll sit down with people and they'll say, you kind of remind me of my father, or you remind me of my brother, or an ex-boyfriend, or my childhood friend, or whatever, right? And that's fine. We want to know that as a therapist. That's not weird to us. We expect it. There's a word for it, transference, so we're expecting it. In her case, she's saying that. She's saying, I wonder if this is transference. I'm not sure. That would honestly be my very first guess. Nick, have you ever had a patient who's actually told you, hey, I'm feeling an attraction, or there's some kind of way that I'm putting a mask on you that might affect our therapy?
In a way, yes, but it's never that clearly identified. My experience is that most of the clients that I've worked with where we've had this kind of transference, they don't even recognize it. Right. It's like they can't clearly put a label on it and say, my therapist reminds me of so-and-so and I have these feelings. It's just, I have these feelings towards a therapist.
That's key.
They don't really recognize where it's coming from.
Right.
So in my personal experience, I haven't had clients tell me they're sexually attracted to me.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. Maybe they just weren't open about it. Or maybe I'm just not physically sexually attracted. You're just not.
Maybe if you got a haircut.
No. But I have had it. This goes the other direction as well, where it can go into anger and hate.
Yes.
I have had an experience. There was a client that I was working with that just could not stand me. And I was having a lot of trouble breaking through with this particular individual. And in talking to my supervisor, I needed to get some feedback. Say, what can I do? How can I break through with this person? And she gave me some great advice. And she's like, ask him why he doesn't like you.
Yeah.
And it's like that.
Come right out with it.
That had not occurred to me.
Yeah.
So I did that in a session, and it was a breakthrough. It was huge because of what this person had gone through.
Right.
As a child, his younger sibling died while he was supposed to be taking care of him. And as a result, he was shunned by his family. They disassociated from him. And every human connection he made, the person ended up leaving. And so what ended up happening is that in our sessions, he started bonding with me.
And that made him
which
scared.
Creates the feeling of, you're going to leave me too.
Yes.
And so he automatically got
pushed you
angry.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was taking out all of these feelings that he had, all these memories and all these associations with his family were transferred onto me.
Yes.
And then I became, this person that he would
right.
target.
And I think that happens all the time. And I've had that happen. I remember when I was a student intern, how you said it a second ago, they don't tell you, right? They don't tell you, hey, I just want to self-report. I don't like you. Or, hey, you kind of remind me of my brother. Or, hey, I have feelings. They don't tell you. You just kind of pick up on it, and then you're trying to figure out what to do with it. So when I was a student intern in my master's, I had a patient. It was one of my very first patients. Like halfway through, she proposed that we elope to London. And yeah.
Wow.
So she just brought that up in all seriousness. She was like, so I really wanted to, float an idea. Don't hate me for it, but what do you think? We get on a plane, we go to London, we live out our days. And I was like, I do not know what to do.
Yeah,
so I did what you did. I ran to my supervisor and I was like, what do I do? And he was like, okay, first thing, don't get on a plane to London. Yeah, don't do that. You do need to say no. And I was like, yeah, I said no. And he goes, okay, now let's talk about it, right? And the deal is this. So to the writer, I think Nick and I would both agree, as therapists, we want to address the elephant in the room. We can't do things with your secrets if we don't know them. So it's okay. It's normal to feel these things. Bring it forward. We will digest it together. And then the second piece of advice, because you are in a master's program and you are learning how to be a therapist, do what I did and do what Nick did. Go to your supervisor. In this case, it's your professor. Go to your professor who's teaching you these things and say, so I'm visiting a therapist and I sometimes have these feelings. Can you give me feedback? It's important that you work on this now during your program when you're training to be a therapist. And not have any shame about this and not be confused by it. It's very normal to experience this.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important thing to remember. Talking to you, the individual who wrote this, that you're not doing anything wrong. This is normal. This does happen,
yes.
and that's okay. This is not anything that is out of the ordinary. Now, when it comes to the question of should I address this, should I bring this up in therapy, I would say yes. And I think your therapist is probably able to handle it.
That's right.
And I would even guess that this isn't the first time that it's happened.
Yes.
And here's the thing too, like, why are we in therapy? We're in therapy to learn about ourselves.
That's right.
This could be a great experience. This could be a doorway into learning something about you.
Yes.
That I think could be very therapeutically beneficial.
I think that's huge. And I think you just nailed it right on the head. The experiences that you have with your therapist we are trying to intentionally elicit things out of you, which means we're trying to shuffle the deck and see what card comes out on top. And so it's really helpful when you tell us, hey, what you just said kind of bothered me, or what you just said really hits me. I thought about what you said all week because it's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. Oh man, that's so valuable, right? We need to know so that we can dig deeper and help you kind of achieve some insight into your own situation.
Right. Now, what do you think would be the potential problem of not bringing it up at all?
I think that you're poisoning the relationship. So now you have a secret about how you feel about the other person that will influence the power they have in this room, and it will influence their ability to speak to you and for you to receive what they say. Now you're more likely to agree with things that you would have challenged before, or go along with things, or even hide the ugliness of your life because now you're thinking of them as a potential mate. Reveal it. Put your cards on the table. Tell them, hey, this is kind of how I've been feeling. I've been taught that it's good to reveal this to my therapist, and let them take the ball. If they're qualified, they'll know what to do about it. They'll talk to you about it honestly, and you guys will move forward together. And you know what? It'll be a breakthrough. That's actually a huge thing to reveal. I think you'll find it's very, very helpful.
Right. I think there can be circumstances in which it can slow down the progress towards your therapeutic goals, the things that you're trying to accomplish. If it's not addressed, then you can find yourself kind of in this stalemate and becoming stagnant and not really moving forward in therapy.
Yes.
There have even been circumstances that I've heard of, where people will cease sessions with that particular therapist, go to a different therapist, work on those transference issues, and then go back.
Yeah, and so we got to put that out there too, because she did ask, is this going to ruin the relationship? I don't think that's the most likely thing that will happen. And it is also possible that when she talks to her colleague about what she thinks she should do, she may decide that she's not a good fit for you because whatever chemistry has happened is now an obstacle to what you came in to work on. Let's say you came in there to work on anxiety. If you're drooling over your therapist, you're not working on your anxiety. And so for her to know that, she may make a decision that it's better for you to switch therapists. Don't be afraid of that, though. That's part of why you talk to a therapist, is so they can guide you through this process.
Yeah, I wouldn't, if something like that were to happen, don't interpret that as being a negative thing, or that, I shouldn't have said anything.
No,
or,
that's not rejection. It's redirection.
That could be the catalyst towards further personal development.
Yes, absolutely. Nailed it. Good question, and continue to pursue your goals. And I'm sorry to hear you want to be a social worker, but it's all right. Everybody sees the light eventually.
It's the way to go. You're doing the right thing. All right. Our next email comes to us via SLM 200. My girlfriend could be better than me. Becoming Insecure is the title. This is the first time in my life that I've had anything close to a girlfriend. I'm not sure if relationship is the right word, but we've been seeing each other for a few weeks now. This girl is very attractive, though I consider her to be out of my league. I might be biased, but I know for a fact she is, since before I got with her, all the guys know her talked about how hot she is. It seems backwards, I know, but since we got together, I've been feeling very insecure about myself. To be truthful, I've always been insecure. Although I hide it extremely well, no one would ever guess I'm insecure aside from my parents. But now I have a sudden desire to get myself more muscular. I'm pretty skinny. I always look at other guys around me who are taller, more masculine looking, and have more attractive faces. All I can think to myself is that she could easily get with these guys if she wished. Despite this, she would never pull guys at the club the whole time we've been at uni, before we got together, but I don't understand why. I just feel she could do better than me. I'm worried about losing her. At university, she has plenty of choice. I would never tell her these things, nor am I going to become an obsessive guy constantly worrying about what his girlfriend is up to. I don't know. I'm just ranting, I guess. Has anyone ever felt like this in a relationship?
Great question.
So, as a guy who has dated exclusively outside of his own league, I feel like I have a lot to offer here.
Well, what do you got to offer on this one, Nick? No, it's funny because as I heard that, I was thinking, join the club, man. I want to say a solid 80% of men are sitting around thinking this exact thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Solidly 80%.
Now, I say that as a joke. And the reason I want to clarify that is because my serious advice on this is going to completely go against everything that I just said. And that is this. The way I looked at this situation is it's kind of like if you were selling your house, what is your house valued at? Not sentimentally, financially, what is your house valued at?
Right.
It's valued at whatever somebody would pay for it.
Right.
So if we take that same philosophy and apply that to dating, it's impossible to date outside your league.
Right.
If she is willing to date you,
then she's in your league.
She's in your league.
Congratulations.
All this really means is that you're at a league higher than what you thought you were.
Right. You might be a rookie in the majors, but you're in the majors.
Right.
Like, this is actually where you belong. But that fear, I think, is common. Because
Absolutely.
If you're a rookie in the majors and you realize, so I can relate, right? So in my case, I married up. I definitely got a girl that way outclassed me. So it's like you're reeling in a fish and you get like a trophy bass. And my wife's probably listening to this going, thank you, because that's how I want to be seen, as a trophy bass. But it's like you pull in a fish that's like, you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I caught this. And so that wonder and that excitement is there. I think that's real life. But my advice to you, brother, don't be intimidated. You have to remind yourself what Nick said is that you are prepared for this. She does see things that she likes in you. And I think the thing that we have to remind guys about a lot is that women are visual, but less so than you, and they put a premium on personality. So there's traits about you that she likes, and that probably includes your carefree nature around her and your confidence. So the worst thing you could do is allow this to be an insecurity that breaks your confidence and changes your personality, and now you're scared that she's going to get away. And I think, Nick, my other piece of advice is, and in all relationships, there is not really any such thing as relationship defense. There are like 9 billion people on Earth. You just can't protect that person from wanting any of those people or from any of those people from stealing them. So you just have to be the best version of yourself. And if that is something you achieve, they will vote for you every single day. But you can't actually defend them from others. And so once you accept that, I think it allows you to be free and just kind of focus on being the best version of you that they originally fell in love with.
Something's working.
Yes.
Right. I mean, so that's the thing that we need to focus on here as well. Obviously, she's still in this relationship. Something is working for you.
That's right.
And let's just say hypothetically, because I'm sure, well, as we've identified, a lot of guys have been in this situation, and it didn't work.
Right.
And the relationship didn't work out. They ended up breaking up. Does that mean that you were dating outside of your league? No.
No.
It still doesn't.
Yeah, it means they elected a different course. They made a decision for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
For some circumstance, it didn't work out. You can take that and look at yourself and say, okay, what are some things I can do different next time? But don't think that, well, that's just because I didn't deserve her and I was out of my league. No, that's not necessarily the case. There's always things that we can improve upon personally. But the whole league thing, I think, is kind of overrated.
Yeah, so takeaways from this one, buddy. A, you're not the only guy that feels like that. B, if she's elected to be with you, that means de facto she is in your league, you are in hers. And I think C, focus on your own self. Like, focus on your own personality, your own traits. Accept her, value her. And also, buddy, avoid the trap. A lot of guys fall into this trap of worshiping the girl they're with. And there's this old adage of like, I treat her like a princess, I treat her like a queen. Most women will tell you that when you do that, it kind of makes them feel uncomfortable because it gives them too much power in the relationship and they're looking for an equal, not a servant. So I say just be you, be the version of you that she decided to start dating, be proud of yourself, remind yourself of who you are, be confident, and step forward boldly. Don't be afraid. If you play afraid, you're going to lose this game, right? You got to come in and just swing at the ball and go for it. But don't be afraid or else you're never going to, get what you're going for in life.
Right. So part of that goes back to building up some of those securities, some confidence. I would really encourage you to do things that are going to build your confidence. If it's the way you dress, if it's being social, being active, picking up hobbies, like all of that stuff. If it makes you feel better and it makes you feel confident, then and it's healthy, so it's not causing any problems, do more of those things.
On that point, this actually goes back to the idea of marriage and family therapy again. We tell people all the time, your sense of identity should not come from who your mate is, right? That's not healthy. That's an ego attachment that they cannot possibly be responsible for the rest of your life. So you've got to find things about yourself that are independent of your spouse, your mate, or your significant other that you value, that you like, and that you invest in because that's something that you find valuable and you want to continue doing.
Yep, absolutely. For me, I enjoy fashion. Mm-hmm. I like dressing nice.
You're a fashionable guy, Nick.
Thank you.
The listener can't see this unless they go to our Facebook page or our Twitter, where you can actually see a live picture of Nick. I will post one, I promise. Go to our Twitter, @PodTherapy, guys. You can see what the great Nick Tangeman looks like in his sporty tie and really suave sweater.
I've been fishing for compliments for weeks now, so this means a lot to me.
This is a big one.
Jim.
Yeah,
yes.
well, hold on. I'm going to post it, okay? These guys are the internet. They're going to do whatever they want to do. There's no promises, buddy.
But the whole reason why I really kind of got into that is because I don't dress nice for other people. I dress nice because I feel good.
Yeah.
When I dress nice, I feel confident.
Right.
I feel secure. It makes me feel good.
Right.
That's the whole reason why I do this. So whatever those things are for you, like I said, if that's hobbies, if that's dressing nice or whatever makes you feel secure is going to help in this relationship, because you're going to start to realize, no, this is my league. I deserve to be up here. I deserve to be dating this wonderful woman.
That's right. And see her for who she is and not for her ranking. A lot of guys make that mistake too, is they have this ranking system where they give numbers to women or they see them as a trophy. We call that objectifying. Don't do that. She's a human. She has a name. She likes you. And your relationship is its own existing thing. And I don't think that it has anything to do with your ranking systems. That's not a real thing. You're imposing that into a real organic relationship. Just be real, man. Be present. It's all going to come together.
Absolutely.
All right, Nick, so this next one is actually very much in your wheelhouse. It has to do with addiction. The question comes from Reddit, and here's what it says. I'm 2.5 years clean and just found out I need my wisdom teeth removed. The anesthetic and painkillers feel like a relapse to me, and I don't know how to proceed since I need them removed one way or another. Any suggestions, opinions would really help. What do you think, Nick?
Okay, well, very common. This happens a lot.
Yeah.
And it is, it's a bit of a controversy, if you will, in the recovery community. Yeah. Not so much the painkillers. Everybody seems to be on board with the painkillers.
Right.
The anesthetic. When you go to any kind of 12-step meeting, there's going to be, most people, I think, are kind of under the understanding that, okay, it's anesthetic, it's a surgery, that needs to happen. There are some really true hardcore folks who say no foreign substances whatsoever in your body.
Bite a rag.
Right, yeah.
Bite a rag.
Yeah. They're, I think, more of the minority in that particular thing. The anesthetic, to me, as an addiction specialist, doesn't really bother me. That's kind of part of the surgery. The painkillers I would be concerned with.
Yes.
It's going to be painful. We can expect that. Anticipate that.
Right.
Adjust your expectations appropriately. It's not going to be comfortable.
Well, also, Nick, define painkillers, right? Because if she's talking about Motrin 800, you and I are not going to write down Relapse in her clinical report. But if she's reaching for things like OxyContin, yeah, because that's a mood-altering substance, right?
Prescription, your prescription opiates, Percocets, oxycodone, things like that.
And I think that's the big criteria, too.
Right.
Right? If you're getting lidocaine, we know that you're not enjoying that.
Right.
It just makes us that you talk funny because your lips don't work.
And here's the other issue, too, and this kind of goes back to one... we've got the opioid crisis right now, right? But just to touch about one really small factor that contributes to this is that when you get a prescription, you're always going to get a prescription that's more than what you need.
Right.
So, for example, if I go to the dentist and I have teeth pulled and I get a prescription for an opioid medication, I may only need that for 1 or 2 days.
But they're giving you 14-day dose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason why they do that is because they don't want me coming back in 2 days, taking up their time in the office to refill that prescription.
Exactly.
Right? So they're going to give me more than what I need. Your best bet is to be very upfront with the doctor right away. Let him know you're in recovery, that you do not wish to be prescribed any opiates, any kind of addictive substances like that. And here's the thing too, take a firm stand on that, because there's a lot of doctors, I'd say most doctors are probably going to respect that, but there's going to be some that don't have a really good understanding of addiction who are going to say, I get that, but you're going to be in pain, so here, take these.
Yes.
You're going to have to be firm and really reinforce, no, I'm not going to do that. Give me ibuprofen 800s, give me something like that.
I think on that note, too, you need your own accountability. You're 2.5 years in, right? So if you tell the dentist, hey, don't give me these, I'm addicted, he'll say, okay, I'm going to write you the paper, and if you don't want it, don't cash it, right? And like, that's dangerous, right? That's a loaded gun. Or he might say, okay, that's fine. If you change your mind, call my office. You're going to experience pain, though, guys, and that's the deal, is like, you have to give yourself permission to experience pain. The only pain-free humans are the dead ones, okay? This is real life. That's life on life's terms. And I think you need to find an accountability partner, a therapist, a sponsor, a friend. Tell them what it is you're struggling with and give them permission to sort of be by your side through this process and to hold you accountable. Those two things in conjunction, and I think you'll be just fine. You're going to keep that sober date. And also talk to your sponsor, right? And we don't even know your status. You don't tell us that you're in Narcotics Anonymous. You don't tell us what fellowship you are. If you want to know our clinical opinion, Nick and I are not going to identify this as a relapse if you're not using any kind of opiate narcotics. If it's lidocaine getting shot into your gums before they rip the tooth out and you're taking Motrin 800, we're not going to write that up as a relapse, that we don't identify that. But you do want to talk to your fellowship because they might have opinions, and I think you at least want to take a survey of what those are and get some advice from them as well. All right, guys, that's all the time that we've got for this week's session. Thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. And for all the other folks that were just listening in, kick us those questions over at podtherapy.net. We're also on facebook.com/podtherapy, or come on over to Twitter and tweet us at podtherapy, guys. Remember that there's going to be a delicious picture of Mr. Tangeman on the internet for you to comment all upon.
All right. Be supportive, everybody. Help people in your life by checking in on them, offering an open ear. You never know whose life might be changed by simply being available. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.